Here's what I want to do. I want to switch gears, and we're going to round up the day. First of all, please practice that. That's going to help you guys more than a lot of other things. We've got about 30 minutes or so. I kind of want to go into this master lease option. I may not be able to cover all of this. That's fine, though. We'll either do a webinar, I'll send the PowerPoint, or something. I want you to get the overall thing. If you're working a deal and you want to do a master lease option, that's something that I think you should be dealing with your coach on. But you will get a grasp of what this is right now. Okay? So a master lease option is a way and is a means of controlling a property. And what I think is interesting about that aspect is, what's that? This is for multifamily. This is a multifamily weekend. So this is for multifamily, or week. Here's my controller. So, this is a way that you can control the property. You're going to have a master lease. What is that? Well, a master lease is by putting in an agreement where you have the right to do some things. Making money by having the right to purchase a property without actually purchasing it. Now that sounds kind of crazy. You control it, but you don't own it. For multifamily properties, what you're going to do, let's say that we're talking about a 20-unit building. And we're going to get maybe into another example here in a moment. But you got this 20-unit building, and you put an agreement together where you lease all 20 units. It's a master lease. And then what you're going to do is sublease to the other 20 units. Does that make sense? So the owner of that property is going to lease to you all 20 units, and then I am going to lease individually each one of the 20. In a sense, that's what we're doing here. Okay? That's what a master lease option is. That's when you take a multi-unit property, put a master lease agreement, I lease all 20 units, and I sublet out each one of them. We got that? Everybody cool with that? Okay. So we're going to sublet the property to individual tenants at a higher rate. That's really the gist here. And I wouldn't even be talking about this technique right now if the timing was different. Meaning, if I didn't think we were going to be in a rent raise situation over the next, well, say 5 to 10 years, I wouldn't be talking about this. But the reason this is so powerful today is because of the national occupancy rate. It's growing each and every month. Because of that, rents are being raised in most major metro markets by 4 to say 10%. 4 to 10%. I think that this is being used for a lot of different things, but one of them by overpriced properties. You might see properties that are overpriced in the marketplace for one reason or another. And they're trying to rid themselves of a situation, a problem, and they just don't know how. Maybe the property's been priced inappropriately, maybe they're not using a good agent or broker, or maybe there's some other factors at play there. But this might be a way where they could rid themselves of their issue. Let's call it, in this particular example, property management. They don't like it. They want nothing to do with the tenant base. They don't know how to handle the tenant base, and they want out. Well, you can determine the true value, I say of the home, that should be apartments, true value of the home by appraisal of comps or capitalization. Now when I say appraisal of comps, that's particularly for 4 units and under. Capitalization, again, is for 5 units and over. So you want to kind of get an assessment of what that property is worth. Okay? Remember this, net operating income divided by cap rate is and that's the market cap rate, is going to give you that market value. The reason that it's important to establish value on our 20 units is because we're going to take over that property with a master lease situation, knowing at first we may not have a lot of cash flow. Because what we work that deal with is we're working it in a sense where we don't own it, but we're leasing out the whole thing, and we're subleasing to the tenants. We still have expenses to pay, and we still have a mortgage to pay, the owner's mortgage, by the way. And so there should be a little bit of margin there in what we sublease it for and what the actual true expenses and mortgage payment are. That should leave us with a little bit of cash flow. Maybe if you're a real risk taker, if it leaves you flat, after you pay the expenses, after you pay the mortgage, you've got nothing left. Why would somebody want to do that, by the way?
Anticipated increase in rents.
Anticipated increase in rents. That's one of the main reasons why I'm teaching this topic today rather than 4 years ago. Because not only are rents going up, but occupancy is going up. That's where you're going to make your money. Now, that's on the cash flow side of the world here. Ultimately, with this lease, master lease scenario, you want to turn this into something that's called a lease option. You're leasing the 20 units with the option to buy. The option is just like the option that you would have in the stock market. You have the option to buy that apartment building, the right to buy that apartment building, but you don't have the obligation to buy that apartment building. This is a really powerful agreement, by the way. If you know rents are going to go up and occupancy is going to continue to climb, and you strike a deal where you're put in a master lease scenario with a 20-unit apartment building, I think if you manage that correctly and over time raise rents like we just talked about and utilize this formula, you can do really well. You saw how when we were talking about the consulting side of things, where you drive NOI, apply the market cap rate, and the value grows exponentially, you're taking advantage of the same thing here. Let's take a couple questions. Mike.
If you're assuming the rent will increase.
Thank you.
If you assume the rent's going to be increasing and it's a lease, you have a lease of your own with the seller. Isn't he going to do the same thing?
If he's trying to escape or solve a problem, probably not, because he hasn't been able to increase rents there, probably, nor does he want to. You're trying to rid him of his problem. The benefit for you is you have the good management. You've got that skill of coming in, straightening the issue out, and you get to capitalize and take advantage of all the rental increases. Okay?
Would there be an advantage to put a right of refusal in the contract?
Possibly, yeah. If you're not putting a lease, that's kind of what a lease option is.
Yeah.
Is you do get first right of refusal. When you have a lease option in place, you have control, but you don't have the ownership. You have the right to buy it at a certain price in the future, but not the obligation. So it's very similar to a last right of refusal. Okay? Sam up here in the front.
It's very simple. Time, term.
Okay, hold on one second.
The terms of the lease.
Okay,
option.
so the term of the lease.
Timeline.
Think about it when you have rented an apartment, if you've done that in your life. The term is basically for 1 year, and you've got rules that you got to follow. This lease option, master lease agreement is going to have the same thing. There's going to be a 2-year term, a 3-year term, and in that 3 years, you're going to have the option to buy that at the price that you came up with here in this exercise. You're going to have that in that agreement. And let's just say this particular term for our 20-unit building is going to be 3 years down the line. 3 years. You're also going to have language in there that you have complete control over that, where you manage the property, you call the shots, you implement capital improvements, but you're also responsible for expenses and the cost of those capital improvements. The cost of those capital improvements for, say, submetering the building for water, or a storm comes and the roof gets damaged and you've got to put in an insurance claim. All of that is going to fall on you, the master lease manager or owner of the master lease. Everybody see that? You're going to act as if you are the owner. You're handling the building in the same way, but on paper, you don't own it yet. You don't own it yet. Dallas, Texas.
Yes. Now, you buy a building, an apartment building complex, again, simple numbers, 50-unit apartment building complex.
We're going 20. Let's go 20.
Okay, 20. Now, you do see a value play in this, and you want to condominiumize that. I guess it kind of goes to an extension of what you just finished saying. But what's the process? Is it a long process? Is it a big process in order to condominiumize apartment building complex that is, as a whole, into each individual?
You're meaning, when you say process, you mean process? Got it. Here's what happens, and not to get off on that because that could be a whole day of class in itself. Thank you guys. Have a safe trip. A condominium, when you do a condo conversion, the apartment units have to go through a process called a horizontal property regime. That's the legal process in which an attorney takes an apartment unit and creates a legal entity out of it. So that's a pretty long, drawn-out process depending on what city, what state, what county you're in. They all have different requirements. The ones that I've been associated with in Florida typically take about 6 months to do.
Okay. And I don't mean to bring up deals that I'm working on, but
You're going to.
I'm going to.
Right.
Because it strikes a chord with me. The one that, you're giggling.
Because you're funny.
We're working on a 15 right now in Phoenix.
Bragger.
Here, Yosh.
No, go ahead, real quick.
I know.
Cut to the chase, though.
It's all right. 15 unit, it's already condominiumized, but we want to. There's a valuable play there that we can collect the rent for for like 2-3 years and then sell it off as such. I think is what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole process of getting it to that point, again, it could potentially be a long one. I know you said up to 6 months in Florida. But because it's in Arizona, obviously each state and each city, each jurisdiction is different.
Right?
Thank you.
That was, okay. You thought it was scary in my head. You know what I'm saying? Wow, thank you for that insight, Dallas. Okay. So you've got to find the true value of the property before setting up the master lease, okay? The next thing that you want to do is make an assumption here. Let's say that the net operating income is $300,000. This is the example, $300,000 divided by the market cap rate. You know, the building would be worth about $3 million, okay? That's kind of how that works. On a 10 cap, it's worth $3 million. Now, what's interesting, and this is where I think a lot of you have questions on, it's one thing to find out present value about real estate, but it's another whole thing to find out future value. And that's where the value comes in with this master lease. Because with a master lease, by the way, you've got equitable interest in that property. You can actually sell that option on the open market for dollars. But you've got to make it valuable. Where the value comes in my mind with this, is what you know already. How to drive value with real estate. And that value is driven by increasing the net operating income, or maybe even doing things like divide and conquer. That's where I think you're really going to get a lot of the value when we're talking about master lease. So you've got to think about what it's worth today and what it's going to be worth at the end of your 3-year term. Does that make sense? So if I had to kind of extrapolate out, I would do things like rental increases, driving down expenses, or if I'm doing divide and conquer, and I'll say that $3 million property at the end of 3 years is going to be worth $4 million. And I know that I can get a 75% loan to value. What has just happened? You're buying a building with no money down. Now, you've caused the value to go up over those 3 years. You're going to pay the owner off the $3 million that you own him, owe him, and you've got a cash flowing building with no money down with $1 million in equity in it. $1 million, okay? The dollar loses value. I want you to think about that because, you know, a dollar today is going to be worth less in 3 years. I want you to take that into consideration as well, okay? Maybe even a lot less. Well, we'll see how things go in this country. Real estate appreciates though. And real estate appreciates because of what I think you can do to it. Forced appreciation. Now, it would be great on the multifamily side if we can get a little help naturally. And I think over time, if I move back into my slides here, if I move to this, over time, when things become more popular, when there's more people buying multi-units because the rents are increasing, the occupancy is increasing, this 10% cap rate today probably compresses in the marketplace. And when I say compresses, that 10 cap may drop to a 9 cap. So Paul, if you did 300,000 divided by 0.09, you don't get 3 million, you get 3,333,333. Do you see that? So we're banking on forced appreciation with our master lease, and we're also banking on the fact that I would imagine that the cap rate is going to compress in most markets in the country here. Okay? Questions with this at all? No? Okay. So present versus future dollars. There's some things that you got to look out for with that, with the dollar losing value, but real estate appreciates with both forced and natural appreciation. Therefore, leasing for a long period of time is a good thing. Meaning, if I'm going to do a master lease option, I'm not going to do it for a year. I'm going to do it for at least 3 years. Because you're going to get 3 years of rent raise, you're going to get 3 years of opportunity for that cap rate to compress, and for that asset to become more expensive or more valuable in the marketplace. Make sense to everybody? Okay. So the property owner doesn't agree with you on the value of the property. Some of you may ask that question. You agree to lease because you believe the property can be worth that much in the future. Okay, so maybe you've got a discrepancy with the owner, and the owner doesn't agree with you with that $3 million price. You might get an appraisal, or you might negotiate. Well, okay, I'll give you the 3.2 that you're asking for, but I'm going to ask for something else in return. Let's say he doesn't believe in the 3 million, he believes it's worth 3.2 today. So you say, hey, how about if we split an appraisal? Or I'll give you the 3.2, but I need to have something in return, and it's probably going to be on the what you're leasing the property for. You're going to ratchet down that lease payment per month to the owner so that you cash flow better. Make sense? Okay. Lease the property for more than his payments, but less than the net operating income. Does everybody see that? You're going to lease the property for more than his payments, but less than the net operating income, so that you have a gap in there. Why do you want a gap? So you make money. So you make money. You want to make sure that you're leaving a scenario where you and the owner, sorry, hit the button, and the owner are making a monthly profit. Now, you might say, well, John, he wants to get rid of the property, he wants to have nothing to do with it. If you can take care of his or her problem, that's good enough for them. Then get it. If you can get that, get it. But if you've got a master lease scenario where you've got an owner of a property that wants to make a little bit of a profit, you're going to have to figure out that formula. You've got to leave a gap there. Now, on the residential level, when I'm talking residential, typically I'm talking about 4 units and under, but I wanted to break this scenario down to you on a basic house. So your house note is $500. Let's say it's Raphael's. Raphael, raise your hand so everybody sees you. Okay, so Raphael's house note is $500. I lease it from you for $700. I lease it to Robert for $8. Do you see how we both make money here? Does everybody see that? Yes. Do you see how this would work on a larger scale? Robert lease, his house note is $500 and his expenses, all that. I lease it from Robert for $700. I'm from Raphael. I lease it to Robert for $800. I make how much? 100. How much does Raphael make? 200. In this scenario, I've decided to give Raphael more. Could you change this up? Sure, absolutely. But I wanted to break it down so that you understand that. Paul.
What about expenses, maintenance, property management?
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's all included in there. Just get the overall thought here. If your total, let's just say your not your note, but your total in is 500. Okay? I lease it from Raphael for 700. He makes 2. I lease it to Robert for
No, I got it.
8. Okay.
What the other expenses were, but they're
Okay. Now you got to work the math on this, there's no doubt. And this is only going to work in areas where you know that you can come in and give better management, increase the occupancy, increase the rental amount.
Oh, actually, I got one more question.
You got one more question?
Thank you.
Okay.
I know it's surprising. What if the roof gets damaged, something that isn't covered by insurance? Who's on the hook for that in this scenario?
Okay, so Paul's asking, what if the roof gets damaged? Who's on the hook for that? Me. I am. I'm taking that risk. I'm going to take that risk. Is it a calculated risk? Sure. But I take that risk. However, there should be insurance there, correct? And that's going to be in my master lease agreement, that insurance is still in effect. Okay? All I'm doing is master leasing it. I don't own it. So I can utilize it. The owner's still going to have to file the claim, but I control the property, but stuff like that he's going to have to take care of.
Is it possible to do this remotely? Like, for example, would this be possible?
Is this remote mic on? Yeah, it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would this be possible to do like remotely, as in the sense of like we put it under a master lease and they give it to a property management team to forward the exercise and profit, the benefits?
Now you're adding leverage. There you go. Now you're starting to catch on.
Right.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't see this happening from Canada.
So you're in Canada. You have your power team on the ground. You strike the arrangement, hand it to your property manager, and you're good to go. Now, in a lease situation, when you lease an apartment, there may be a little bit of security deposit that you have to put in place. How do you handle that? Anybody? Okay, tenants could be one of them. So you're going to require that the security deposits transfer to you with that situation. Now your property manager is going to have to put those probably in an escrow account, okay? The owner may say, well, listen, for me to do this, I'm going to take a security deposit from you. Well, that's fine. You're going to put this in your escrow account as well. So you may come across that, but yeah, you could have a property manager locally work that deal for you. Absolutely. Now you're catching on a little bit. So the cost per unit, in this example, we're going to 245 units. And I'm going to not go too far into this because I want to wrap up and take some final questions. But in this particular example, the cost per unit is $439, meaning loan, expenses, all of that per unit is about $439. Rent is $700. So do you see the difference, the gap there that I'm talking about? I offer you $600 a month for that. So let's say that we go back to our scenario where Raphael is the owner of the building. And Raphael has 245 units. And if he broke down his loan and his expenses, that would be about $439 per month. However, Raphael is older, he's tired of property management, his kids are in college, maybe he wants to spend more time with them. In other words, the owner is kind of sick and tired of owning. Does that ever happen? All the time, all the time. Now, you could work a deal with Raphael and say, listen, I know that you're making about $300 and some odd dollars in cash flow right now, but you have a lot of headaches. What I'd like to do is put in a master lease scenario where I run the property and I cut you a check every single month for, instead of $330 a month, $230 a month, or whatever this math equals out to. You get 100. I'm sorry, I get 100, you get 230. 100 times 245 units is how much? 24,500. Okay? I make 24,000, right? A month. You make how much? Double that. Okay? So I want you to know you're still making a lot more than me, but I've got a plan. You now have a situation where you're not worried about running this, you're not worried about managing the property manager, you're not worried about toilets, termites, and tenants kind of thing. And I've just relieved your problem. And I'm probably going to have an agreement with you where I'm going to buy this in the future at an agreed upon price. You're going to sell this, you can already calculate that price, so on and so forth, right? So in this overall idea of a master lease option, I want you to kind of work it out where both parties benefit. You still have to be able to solve a problem for the owner. You get a profit of $161 a month, whether it's leased out or not. Who is? You do, because I accept that risk. Would I do this 5 years ago? No. Why? The rents aren't there. The occupancy is not there. The rental increase isn't there. You all saw the USA Today the second day of the class, right? The United States of America is a nation of renters, and it's growing dramatically each and every month. The master lease option is a great technique for that. I get 100, you get 161, if that's how that math works out, by the way. Okay? 161 a month for you, 100 for me, whether if it's leased or not. Who takes the risk there, by the way? You. Right. Why would an owner do that? Because if he doesn't have properties leased, then he's not getting the 161, maybe even, or not the 261, he may not even get the 161. Does everybody see that? That's the benefit to the owner. He is getting paid, whether it is leased or not, $39,445 a month. No more tenants and toilets. He still has ownership. What's the worst case scenario? I no longer lease the property from you. You do have to go through eviction, by the way, for that, if there was an issue. Tax benefits, deductible interest, and the owner can still depreciate the property. Benefits to us. I'm sorry, did you want to take a picture of that? You got it? Did you? Everybody got the picture? Okay. Benefits to us. Profit from day one. If all 245 units are leased, $24,500 a month. Probably not all $245 per units are going to be rented, wouldn't you say? Let's say there's a 10% vacancy rate there. What does that 24,500 number turn into? 22. Say there's a 20% vacancy rate there.
What about the costs? It was $400 and something per apartment.
Right.
Well, now you're going to pick up those costs because you still got to give them the 161.
Yeah, but you already are because
You're getting the whole 700
you're getting the whole 700 in rent.
before that.
You lost me there.
I lost you. Let me back up. hold on, guys. Let's back up because I want everybody to understand this.
So cost per unit is 439.
Right.
You're still giving him 161.
That's right. Isn't it great?
700 minus 161.
You're getting $700 a month for all the units. Let's just say they're 100% occupied. You're paying $439 in costs, expenses, mortgage. You're giving the 161 to the owner.
The owner?
You're keeping the 100,
That's right.
right?
Perfect.
Perfect.
Now it's not rented. You're still giving 161, and it's still costing you 439, so you're short 5.
Right. You're taking on that risk. That's correct. So that 22,000 may not be 22, it might be 14.
Right. But it drops faster than it increases.
Possibly, but you want to make sure, you know, at market occupancy, you want to make sure you've got 90%, people are collecting rents. That's up to you. You would have that risk if you owned the apartment outright,
For sure.
right? I'm not asking you to take on a risk that an apartment owner wouldn't take on. But guess what? He still has the ownership, he still has the tax benefits. You profit from day one. If all 245 units are leased, that's $24,500 a month. That is profit. That's after you expense. That's after you do the expenses, right?
That's right.
You have the control and you have the right to buy. This is what you're after. And I want to kind of go back to this and we'll leave it at this. This is what you're after. You are after the management of that, increasing the occupancy and increasing the rents. I know I went from 20 units to 245, but let's use 245. Let's just say that you increase the rent on 245 units by 4%. We're getting $700 a month. That's $28. Paul, $28 times 245 is how much?
6,800.
6,800. Take that, times that by 12.
82,320.
82,320. Take that and divide it by an 8 cap. Actually a 9 cap, just to be conservative. 0.09. You've just increased the value by $914,000. Excuse me. And you've given yourself a raise of probably another $100,000 for the year. Do you see why the master lease could be a wonderful technique for you?
Isn't that better than owing?
Maybe. Maybe. I wanted to give you another option for people that are looking for multi-family unit properties and they don't have money or they can't find it, because I get that all the time. John, I don't know where to find the money. I don't have the money. I'm down to my last thing. I put in. Yet here's another idea where you can get involved in the multifamily world with not a lot of money. With not a lot of money. You just want the control. This is another way not only that you can take advantage of the cash flow, but you can take advantage of ownership. Right here, it's another idea.
This is only because this would be a different type of seller.
It would be a different type of seller, there's no doubt. This isn't the run-of-the-mill seller. This is a specific situation. But if you were out seeking these in the market that you're in, Dallas, not to bring you up again, but Phoenix, in that little area, this stuff should be like taking candy from a baby and then kicking the baby. By the way, I don't advocate kicking babies. Dallas loves to kick babies. I don't. He's violent. I'm not. So, I'm just kidding. But I just want to give you ideas. This is food for thought. This is strategy, food for thought. Special kind of sellers, no doubt about it. But Phoenix is a little bit hindered in their area that they're focused on. So I think that'd be a good technique to use.